Well, here we are on a Friday morning. It's very near the new year. Pat McGart is waiting to extend his greetings, I suppose.
Uh,
Anticipate saying happy, 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 happy. Say
yeah,
2023. We'll have to get used to saying that 2023, not
Jesus, Jude,
2020.
but I'll tell you this much, Jude. I remember I was driving into work. I think it was on the Millennium Year, and it was that was obviously 2000. I think it was going to work on the 1st of January in 2000, as far as I remember. And like it seems like yesterday, and now we're already almost turning the key on the end of 22 and heading into
Oh,
2023. But
yeah, yeah.
by the way, just one of the things I remember, I was listening to the radio. I think it was BBC. The only station I could get that morning was BBC. I think it was BBC Radio 4. And there was a doctor who came on and he said, a female child born in any part of Britain, as he called it that day, uh, should have no bother reaching 100 years of age. He says that would be the life expectancy of a person born in
Yeah.
the year 2000. Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing?
It is astonishing, astonishing. The good thing you'd like to think too is that people will live into healthy old age.
Yeah.
Because there's not much fun in sort of being 80 or 90 and, crippled with arthritis or some
Or
other complaint.
doubly incontinent or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah. Charming, charming prospect. Thanks for that, Pat.
Charming thought,
I
or
carry
what?
that with me all day.
Uh,
Okay, let's talk about
uh,
affairs of state. Looking back on the year, this was hugely significant year. I think for nationalists and deeply psychologically wounding, would you say, for unionists?
Absolutely, Jude. The direction of travel is one way, and you can sort of fight all over the sort of entrails of what it means. But the reality is, for this, palpably, the census sort of reveals more. There are more Catholic nationalists than unionists.
Yeah.
Sinn Féin, for the first time ever, became the largest party
Uh-huh.
at Stormont. Uh, Brexit has caused a real fissure in the sort of relationship between the Unionists and Britain, and even in the Northern Ireland community, and with Dublin. So the bad news seems to be all for unions. But the other side of the story, Jude, is have you ever talked about being the author of your own misfortune? Unionism, they never miss an opportunity. I was about to say to you, Ruben, to mess up, and they've done it every time. They seem to think that lashing out and so on, they make no effort at diplomacy. It's just non-stop. And by the way, anybody wants to come back at me on this, this is not bigotry, they just mess up every time. Like the latest there was Dame Arlene Foster. When she had out it, she said the Northern Ireland office was supine and was useless. Dublin was aggressive. Richie Sunak wasn't interested in the union, and so on. If unionism thinks that's the way to win friends and influence people, keep going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's a sense that Republicans have been fairly quiet, and with good reason that they don't want to
Yeah,
interrupt their
yeah.
opponents while they're making mistakes. I wonder, will, on the other hand, this sort of sullen denial of the way things are traveling, will the
Yeah.
fact that they are in a state of sullen denial mean that we actually might say goodbye to Stormont and goodbye to the Good Friday Agreement as well?
Yeah, well, Jude, I can't see Stormont coming back because what the unionists, no matter what, Susan McKay in her book, I read it, can't remember the title of it now, but she said basically she interviewed some wee girl from about Portadown. She said the DUP were going around saying vote Brexit, because that'll give us a hard Brexit and that'll do
Hmm.
this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
And she says I'll get the Republic out of our way. The only reason the Republic have a sort of say is because of Europe and all this sort of stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they said, look what we have got. We've got now the worst of both worlds, sort of things politically, and that's a sort of reality. And the unionists have basically they've messed up every which way, and they're lashing out, and it's not working for them.
But you see, Pat, if they were to go into the executive and reconstitute Stormont, it would make visible what we all know is the case. That is to say that there is a majority of nationalists stroke Republicans, and that Sinn Féin is the leading party in the north of Ireland. In
Yeah,
denial, in contradiction to the way the state was set up. they're holding back on that, and I think they're wise to do so because it would glaringly show to the world the nonsense of a state that was set up to protect unionism and give it a favourite place, which now finds itself forced into a democratic state.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The reality is the days of unionism, triumphalism, and majorityism are over. Now, Jude, here's the thing.
Pat, just sorry to interrupt you, but my point is, yeah, I agree with you, but that would only make it sort of headlines.
Exactly, Jude.
Could see it.
But here, Jude, I've said this on many occasions because I'm only repeating one of the things that was part of the strategy of the IRA back in the 50s and 60s was to make Northern Ireland unworkable. That was the whole thing, to prove it was an artificial great state, and it was no failed entity, to quote Charlie Hoy. The Nationals used to do that. Now it's the Unionists are doing it. Jude, if we cannot get a sort of Stormont Parliament up and running, what is the point of having a Northern Ireland state?
Well, you see, they might argue that, well, I know that the DUP are opposed to direct rule, but they might settle for that as the least bad option.
Aye, but that's going to give Dublin a far bigger
That's true. That's a catch. All right. Although they deny that and they say no.
Aye, but
no,
they're going to deny it. But even the Dublin, do you think for a second, Rishi Sunak, with all the problems he has, their priority, without question, in the next couple of years for any government in London, is going to be every economist of any worth of note is saying Brexit is a disaster, and it's getting increasingly harder to hide it. Yeah. They don't need trade deals with New Zealand or Australia, which is so far away. They need to trade with France and Germany. It's where people go on holidays. It's where they come over, where they sell their BMWs and their Rolls Royces and all the rest of it. They don't. Who cares if you sell 10 Rolls Royces to Sydney when you can sell maybe 300 to Frankfurt?
True. I couldn't agree more. And the answer to that, of course, would be to rejoin the single market. But there's so many wounded pride around, so much wounded pride that they'd find it very difficult to do. Tell me this, Pat. If you were a unionist, say you were a member of the DUP, say you were Jeffrey Donaldson, what would you do that you think would help restore the sort of prestige status of the DUP and of unionism generally?
Well, I don't know, Jude. Apparently, their current stance is playing quite well with the unionist community. But
but it's not playing well with anybody else.
No, exactly, and it's by the way, it's short-term gain, long-term loss. And by the way, the corollary of it as well. The DUP is doing Sinn Féin a big favour. You alluded to it earlier on. Sinn Féin don't have to say anything. In fact, Sinn Féin have been remarkably quiet. They're letting the DUP dig the hole deeper and deeper and deeper.
But is there anything that the unionists can do, that the DUP can do?
Start acting like politicians. Stop asking for the impossible. Don't let sort of perfection get in the way of the good. They should make an arrangement that they can live with. Jude, anybody with half a brain can see that there are advantages in the protocol. Work that. Stop listening to Jim Allister as well. If you're going to take the extremists, you're never going to get a. Jim Allister has basically said any unionist that goes into government with Sinn Féin is not a unionist. Well, hey, Jude, that's Northern Ireland over.
Yeah, you see, that's the tail wagging the dog a bit once again. I think myself, you talking about the direction of travel, and I think most people would agree that things are moving. It does appear to be moving towards a border poll and probably United Ireland. So it's a question of time, maybe more than will it happen. If I was a unionist, I think, if you used long-term vision or even medium-term vision, you would say, all right, I don't know if this will happen in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years even, but I think I'm going to prepare for it now. Yeah, I think exactly. They should be forging themselves into a united, strong faction or party that could form up to 20% of the, at least we were told at one stage, of the United Ireland Dáil. Would that not make sense, to say, well, these are the terms under which we'll come in?
Yeah, I presume them. But you see, I remember Brian Friel using the whole thing about you're in a corral, and the minute you break away from the corral, you're outside the corral, and there's no unionist, I think, right now has got that courage to go outside and say, maybe we should start talking to Dublin, see what sort of deal we could get, because they'd probably be lynched for it. But but Jude, let's get this clear. You know it, and I know it, and everybody else knows it. Jude, we are now in a sort of nexus period. It's where we go next. And I don't mean that in the way it sounds. Like the old days are over. It's where we're on a different road now, and everybody recognises, Jude. The British government recognises Dublin. Now they might want to hide it. They might do. Jude, the demographics are changed. The realities have changed. The political reality has changed. Remember George Osborne, the former chancellor, who said Belfast should be looking more to Dublin than to London, and he was dead right.
Oh yeah. It's a very hard pill to swallow for people who've built their careers and their history essentially on not yielding, not giving an inch, and presenting union with Britain or the UK as being the ideal situation. And all fronts is contradicted. Anyway, happy New Year, guys. Let's see how you get on.
Let's see we go from there.
Okay. Right, let's move to the state papers, because this is sort of an extension of that. The 30-year state papers are come out, and as you point out, Lord Kilcooney, whose sister incidentally died in that accident. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
That accident on the Cookstown, I think it was the Cookstown
Road,
Dungannon Road.
Yeah.
I think she was one of the victims. I'm fairly sure of that. In any case, if that's the case, my condolences to Lord Kilcooney. But we're talking about him as he spoke in 1998 and said that if the Orange March was allowed to go down Drumcree, wasn't allowed to go down Drumcree, down Garvaghey Road, there would be no Garvaghey Road. Was he saying that they were going to wreck the place? Was that?
Yeah, basically, I don't know. He made the comment at a dinner where there was an Irish diplomat, a consular in the London embassy.
Yeah.
In fact, the guy was so shocked by the sort of vehemence of the statement that he said the next day he rang a person who was, I think, an English bishop, a clergy, Church of England bishop or clergyman of some status. That's all I'm saying. He rang him the next day to say, look, wait a minute, did I get this right or did I mishear? The answer is no. You heard it absolutely right. So the consular and the Irish embassy reported this back to Dublin and so on. And apparently people like Bertie Ahern were quite shocked at the sort of tone. Basically, Jude, it was a threat. And the guy said he thought that Taylor had pre-prepared the remark to sort of indicate, look, we better get her our way, and so on.
But that's
just going to throw you. Can you imagine if Martin McGuinness had measured a threat like that in the same way? It would have been so on. But it's how the establishment. When the IRA or a Republican says something, they're thugs and threat. And yet when it's said by Lord Kilcooney, it's a reality of the political situation.
Yeah. But that's a tradition of unionism, is to have this image in the background of loyalists / unionists going crazy. I remember distinctly, now I can't remember what the occasion was that he was referring to, but I remember talking to David Irvine. And something had happened that the IRA had done. Now, it might have been Canary Wharf, or it might have been, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But he said, I remember I asked him to say it again because I couldn't believe it. He said it. He said, the UVF say if that happens again, anything like that happens again, they'll go completely apeshit. Those were his words. They will go apeshit. In other words, you guys do what we want you to do, or else we'll have this backlash of violence. That's the thing that's holding back a lot of people in terms of the border poll, in Dublin and in the north as well. Better to hold on to nurse's hand in fear of, for fear of something worse. And the loyalists don't mind, or unionists don't mind talking that up. What
do you think the loyalist community councils are all about? They just keep issuing one threat after another, and everybody's dancing to their tune. I think people should stop dancing to the tune. Jude, if every time you want something, you issue a threat, and everybody cows down through cowardice, that means the bully gets their way. That's not the way to.
Absolutely agree, Pat. That's a very denial of democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also this thing about the backlash, and Bertie Ahern and people like that are to be censured, I think, for it. They say, oh, you couldn't have a border poll. You've got to win over the unionists first. Well,
That's never going to
yeah, you do
happen.
your best to win them over, but there was an agreement
Yeah,
signed 25 years ago that
yeah,
said you could have a border poll if you believed there was a chance it would be, and regardless of, I mean, I know, of course, we're concerned. Of course, we want unionists who are, of course, Irish men and Irish women to come with us on this. And the bigger majority they can get, the better. But for God's
yeah.
sake, to say, no, you can't have it because they don't like it.
Like it, yeah.
That gives the veto to the minority. Although that'll go on
Yeah,
forever.
and I know this stuff, Jude, and we've mentioned before. But I heard Leo Varadkar in the big interview about 5 years ago. And I think Ray Bassett pointed it out as well to me, where he said, "Oh, this simple majority, 50+1 poll wouldn't be good enough." And as Ray, who was one of the architects in the background for the Irish government during that whole, he pointed out right away, maybe it's about 10 years ago now, I think, that this was totally wrong. The Good Friday Agreement states categorically 50+1 is enough. A 50+1 is enough to maintain the union. It is enough to get Irish unity.
Yeah, but it's a state of mind like everything else. It's like unionism and, the idea of them as a chosen people. It's a state of mind which says, oh dear, what will happen? We couldn't possibly live with this big chunk of loyalism opposed to us and being prepared to resort to violence. I really think that way lies disaster, but it's very deeply embedded in this. We've talked about this relatively recently, and I was telling you about a guy I was emailing in Dublin, or Wicklow actually, and his saying that he was fearful of a civil war. If in fact there was a border poll that voted for you.
Jude, someone like both sides have lived through a civil war, and both sides, I would presume, there's severe reluctance to go back. But Jude, the reality is, and I have mentioned this now about 10 times, there are old Republicans who say, and I have no doubt they were telling me the truth. I've talked to these guys, and I presume there's younger generation coming. Look, it cuts both ways. If the loyalists want to go back to civil war or want to go, they're quite willing as well. They have, as Martin McGuinness said one time, look, Pat, if you think I want to keep on going on this, but he says we need to get this sorted, and I think that's true.
Okay, one of the other, the release of papers has brought into the arena a number of things. One of them being Gerry Adams talking about Canary Wharf, and you have some.
Jerry said that he met with Irish government officials, and he said this was after the peace process had broken down after the IRA ceasefire had ended, and he said, like, he told the officials confidentially, he says, if this gets into the papers, he says, I am no longer trusting you. But he says, I didn't know about Canary Wharf, and even if I did know, I couldn't condemn it because that would have left me out on the street from people that I know. Now, Jude, I find it very hard that Gerry didn't know about Canary Wharf, because a certain other leader certainly did, because he actually, one day we were having a conversation, and he said to me, I said, what's happening? He says, well, there could be something big coming down the track shortly. That was a Wednesday. On Friday night, there was a Canary Wharf bomb. So anyway, I'm not making any allegations against Gerry. I'm just saying that, I presume the Republican movement somewhere along the way must have known. But the whole thing about Canary Wharf, Jude, basically, Canary Wharf, Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams, and I'm putting this in the right, put their lives on the line. McGuinness particularly, he went around every IRA unit and all the rest and told them so. And a lot of them are sort of saying, Martin, is this what it's all for? Why so many have died and why so many in prison so you guys can get into politics? And Martin basically says, yeah, it is. The next phase of this is we get into power and we get a United Ireland. That's how it works. So he said a lot of them saw it as betrayal. So he said that they had to get someone out, and after they had gone down so far down the road, they were basically what was happening. It was the British government were prevaricating. Dublin was prevaricating. There was no deal. They wanted decommission, and they wanted everything under the sun.
That's exactly it. It was David Trimble too who was holding their feet to the fire and saying the IRA must be disarmed before you can have Republicans Sinn Féin into talks. And that was 18 months later. And I remember that so well. And, even sort of non-radical commentators at the time saw the logic of it, at least in terms of achieving development, in terms of the talks. It really was a wake-up call for the British government, and to strike right at the heart of financial
By the way,
district.
there's just one point because it comes into my head. Gregory Campbell has complained or suggested for years that the IRA defeated, and that's why they went in. My answer to I know that's why they went into talks, and that's why they basically surrendered. Jude, if the IRA could get a bomb through to London to Canary Wharf, and they could also shoot mortars at Downing Street, does that suggest to you that the IRA were finished?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't go as far as I saw a clip there yesterday, in fact, of the announcement of the IRA's ceasefire, and all the cars streaming down the Falls Road waving tricolours. And the camera was close with one guy, and he leaned out and he said, "We won the war."
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say
I'm
that
not
won the
going
war.
that far. But what I'm suggesting is that the IRA, the British government, I agree with McGuinness's analysis. I had a big, long conversation with him one day. He said, "Pat, we could keep going. They could keep going. But what's the point?"
Aye, absolutely. I mean, eventually you're going to have to get it down to conditions. Anyway, I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Regardless of the reaction of unionists, the fact of the matter is, astonishingly, the biggest party in the north of Ireland is Sinn Féin, and the biggest party in the south of Ireland is Sinn Féin. Now, if you'd said that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, people would say,
"You'd been laughed at.
Are you mad?" And yet it happened. And, there was so much opposition to that, not just from unionism, but from within nationalism. I mean, you look at the papers and the degree to which, the foreign relations department in the south were opposed to Sinn Féin. My God, they were trying to block them at every turn, especially in America.
At one stage, the Irish Times was considered very liberal and radical and so on. The Irish Times has really nearly taken over the centre ground, or the right wing ground that was previously held by the Irish Independent. Most of its columnists are all they do is scold Sinn Féin day in, day out.
That's right. Although there was something, and I read something in the show, I'm trying to remember what it was, about, oh yes, it was a fairly long interview with that guy who is their, what do we call him, the shadow minister for security, was it? Or was it something else? Justice, maybe. Minister for Justice. And it's quite a long and extended article, and it's fairly reasonably, it's a good interview. And allows the guy to talk and say whatever it is he wants to say. So that struck me as being a change in tone.
Who's this we're chatting about, Jude?
I'm trying to remember the guy's name now. He's
was this Irish or British?
He's from Leitrim, I think, and he's their spokesman, Sinn Féin's spokesman for justice, I think. John,
sorry,
I can't think of what his name is, but you'll see him. You see him on the Weekend Politics.
I know the guy you're on about.
A tall guy, about 50.
Tall guy. He's from Leitrim.
And quite very, very, like many of these people, are quite articulate. But anyway, my point was that, there does seem, at least occasionally, to be a shift in terms of the Irish Times and their anti-Sinn Féin
rhetoric
campaign. You said that, there was absolute bollocks that Jerry Adams didn't know about the Canary Wharf bomb, and that if he had known about it, he wouldn't have tried to do anything about it. I think, don't forget, he was quite right about the second. He would not. He would be crazy.
Really, I have to admit, right, okay, he says he didn't know about it, so I'm just going to accept that. But I find it hard to believe the upper echelons of Sinn Féin didn't know what was going to happen.
I would have thought he very likely did as well. But I mean, that's the position he's taken. And I mean, people deny stuff all the time. If you go into a court of law and you're asked how do you plead guilty or not guilty, nobody says because you did the job, you're a liar if you say not guilty.
Martin McGuinness's famous one says, why do you say you were not in the IRA? He said, that is the stupidest question. Why did you say you're in the IRA? That's a 5-year jail sentence. But some of these Dublin and you told a lie. You said you weren't in the IRA. Right, okay, I'm going to get myself 10 years for saying yes. Don't be stupid.
10 years if you're lucky enough and not be shot before that. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you mentioned also that Noel Dunn says, yes, in current Dublin, that shoplifting has reached such a stage that employees are fearful of challenging people from lifting valuable bottles of spirits because these guys can turn nasty and attack them and so on, and that he really doesn't know what to do about it. What's your own response to that?
Jude, he said a couple of years ago you might be finding one person a week.
Yeah.
He says now. He says the guy Noel Dunn, he was interviewed, and I think it was the Irish Times,
Yeah.
and he said that morning that they'd already caught 3 people shoplifting. He says shoplifting. He says now, Jude, I'm not quite sure, but I think what he's trying to say is a lot of the things now, it's a reflection of the poverty out there, but also in change in values. Somebody, by the way, Jude, I was watching somebody on one of the programs last night. I think it was John Bishop, and he says we're living in an era where we're witnessing the death of shame. People don't care anymore about, like look at the politicians and so on. Jude, he's saying a lot of people. Noel Dunn was saying that a lot of people are coming into his and stealing stuff, and now are guys in suits and so on. And he says, and they're just lifting stuff. But I think he's also referring to the fact that, Jude, there are 2 Irelands. There's the one with a lot of money, and then there's the one with nothing. Like I was reading a wee bit this morning, but Peter McVerry, who I regard as one of the great humanitarians of our age.
Yes.
He said he was brought up in a comfortable in Uri. His father was a doctor and whatever, and he joined the Jesuits.
Yeah.
And then he cut the chase. He said they were Summerhill in Dublin. They went up to this, they were living in the Jesuits were, and he says there were rats as big as cats running around. And he says there was at some of the flats. He said a mother woke up one morning to find a rat sleeping in one of the cots. Stuff like that, Jude.
Yeah,
Anyway, Jude, we've only 10 minutes. We need to do a review of the year.
But that's a good point to make. I think it comes back to Rishi Sunak. How can people who've lived a life that's so different from ordinary people appreciate the kind of pressures they're under? Just one point with regard to the men in suits. You were saying guys dressed in suits now lifting bottles of spirits. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're of the middle class. It might be and it might not. Because if I was going to steal, or if somebody was going to steal a bottle of whiskey or whatever, or several bottles, you mean you wouldn't come in wearing sneakers and a t-shirt?
No.
You'd dress up.
Technically following you right.
Least possibility. But the last point on this, I'm amazed that technology hasn't developed to the level where there would be ways of stopping that happening without putting staff at risk. Because, you've got cameras for a start. There should be a system, surely, where if the cameras see something that's not right, that automatically triggers some sort of gate or, exit or whatever. There must be ways. My God, if they can send men to the moon and all the rest of it, why can't they find ways of stopping?
In a busy store, it'd be very difficult. My son, by the way, just a quick first, many, many years ago, about 17 or 18 years ago, he was only about 17 at the time, he got a summer job working in a store in Letterkenny.
Yeah.
And he said on one occasion he saw this guy of a certain persuasion lifting a bottle of whiskey and going out the door with it. And he challenged him. And the guy actually was very, very aggressive. And my son said, I'm not getting paid to do a security man's job. So he said the next time he saw it, he just went on, he informed the manager, but he said, I'm not putting a bottle in the face.
That's my point. I agree that you shouldn't be putting staff at risk, but there should be systems. Like, if you think about it, even in a big supermarket, the section that has booze is sort of fenced off. It has a little gate to get into it. It shouldn't be beyond the wit of man to have a way in which the CCTV camera will be linked in some way to shutting down of these gates.
Yeah, if you stole something out.
And then get the cops, and then after that,
I accept that.
I just find it hard to believe that they would.
That it cannot be done.
Exactly. Although it is a symptom of the way things are, that people just don't have the money for it. And incidentally, Pat, this thing about the breakdown in public values or, no sense of shame, I don't know. I think back to the 50s, 60s, certainly the early 60s. And you had books like Alan Silito's The Loneliness of the Longest Runner. You had Saturday Night and Sunday Morning. And there were guys that were saying, the narrators were saying, we don't give a damn about the big bosses. They're all out for themselves. If I got a chance to lift money, I'll lift it, So the anti-hero was firmly established way back then.
But you know, like even when you have Nick Hancock and what do you call him, Boris Johnson, so these boys don't even attempt. They don't give a shit. They just sort of say, all right, we give our friends PPE contracts. What do you expect?
Yeah, but I mean, I think we sort of knew that, maybe it's just becoming more obvious, but we sort of knew that.
But it's like now the gangsters are in charge. Whereas before there was at least the sort of optics of sort of decency and fairness.
Yeah. Listen, let me come back for one moment to, I think, a piece you mentioned earlier, the fact that there was 3 prime ministers this year and whatever number of chancellors, etc., and that it cost Britain or the UK 60 billion. Liz Truss's mismanoeuvres with the economy.
Liz Truss's 6 weeks cost the British Exchequer 60 billion.
Now, so the conclusion you come to is Liz Truss and the guy who was her chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, hadn't a clue. Right? Have you established that? Liz Truss got her job as prime minister because she was elected by majority of union or of Conservative MPs.
Yeah.
So they agreed with. Most Conservative MPs thought this was a jolly good idea. To elevate this woman to 10 Downing Street. Rishi Sunak at the time was going around saying, no, that'd be disastrous. No, that would be really a bad idea. And the majority of them voted for Liz Truss. And then when things were screwed up, they said, we'll have to go to Rishi Sunak. So let's not forget that there's a tendency to see Sunak and Kwasi Kwarteng as a pair of sort of renegades, idiots, and that sensible people in the House of Commons wouldn't go along with that. The majority of the Conservatives went totally along with it. And it was only when the consequences were rammed down their throats that they
but you meant Truss and Kwarteng. You said Sunak.
Sorry,
Sunak was telling him this is what's going to happen if you do this. And then exactly what he said basically did it. And by the way, that's the reason he's Prime Minister of the day, because he predicted it so accurately.
That's right, yeah. Anyway, not that the...
But Jude, we have only about 6 minutes left, 4 minutes, right? The Queen died. This year, Putin's war, what do you call it, 3 prime ministers in 1 year. What's your view of 2022?
Wow. Well, let's say a week is a long time in politics and a year's even longer. I don't regret it. I mean, it's sad that the British have to go through this, but I'm glad that they have Rishi Sunak as a prime minister rather than Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. In terms of their economy, I mean, it's a question of mitigating disaster. I think it's just trying to shore up. It's never going to get cured. I honestly don't think it's going to get cured, except they do something fairly radical. And it'll take them about 10 years to get the, dare I say it, the cojones to do the right thing and join the single market again. Because there's no other way. The British economy is screwed. The National Health Service is screwed. There's so many areas of life that are not going to recover. There's more food banks than there. Was it you told me this or something?
There are more food banks
than McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Holy cripes! That's a breathtaking.
The managing director of Iceland,
I know that guy.
He's a young guy, very dynamic. And he went on one day and he says, "Let's say something here." And I thought it was an amazing thing for a guy who I presume is a conservative to say, one of the elite type. He says, "Let's get this clear." He says, "This society isn't working on the basis that there are now more food banks than there are McDonald's and on the British Isles." Dude, and there was a nurse on quite recently on social media, and she said, "I would like to ask the Chancellor, what do you call him, whose name, Hunt, is it Jeremy Hunt?"
Jeremy Hunt.
She said, I would like to ask him, if I am, and the Health Minister, or the Health Secretary, if I am so well paid, and she says, I've got 3 children, why am I going to food banks?
It is kind of ridiculous. And of course you're having strikes, which it seems amazing, like with Conservative government in, that these strikes are winning the sympathy of the public, despite the efforts of all of the tabloids
and the establishment. What is it? The Ben, what do you call him? The defense minister yesterday says, "We will not be held to ransom by strikes." Held to ransom. These are the very people, Jude, who could find literally, and I mean literally, billions for their friends, for PPE contracts, for equipment that was ridiculous. They give them out as willy-nilly. They could find the money tree then, but they can't afford to get. They say now they can't afford to give money to nurses for doing a job when people who are earning, factually correct, 20% less now than they did 10 years ago.
Okay, let's move very briefly to a final topic, and that is we can't pass over without saying something about Pele, who
Yeah,
died yesterday,
yeah,
as did Vivienne Westwood, the stylist. But
yeah.
what's your estimation of Pele? I mean, everybody says he was the greatest footballer ever.
That would be my opinion as well. He's of my generation. Hey, look, Jude. I know you can't compare teams and individuals, but he won 3 World Cups. He was the star of each of every time. He
Yeah.
was the best player ever. And somebody said this morning, I think it was Erling Haaland, the Norwegian, said everything you see a footballer doing now, Pele did it first.
Well, I have a problem in a way with Pele. I mean, I know he did all these things and he was a marvelous footballer, but we know people are marvelous footballers by seeing it. That is to say, seeing it on TV.
Yeah.
And he was a marvelous footballer back in the days when it was black and white and blurry.
Uh,
Then you had Maradona when things was color and rather more.
but you had Pele in 1970 when it wasn't black and white in color, or it was
Well,
and he
I
was
find it
brilliant.
hard to think of an image of him doing something that excites me. Not to say that he wasn't a great player and probably the greatest, but I am excited when I see that performance of Maradona scoring that goal, and
Uh,
I'm excited all the time when I see Lionel Messi come onto the field.
yeah.
So I think it's hard for us to judge, but well, I'll take other people's word for it. I'll take your word for